Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast with Christine Luken, the financial dignity coach. In this podcast, we help you recover a positive and peaceful relationship with your personal finances. We do this by bringing together wise money management with emotional intelligence. Join us for this journey where we navigate our relationship with money as Christine Luken draws from years of experience and guest experts to help you get to the root of your money issues.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast. I am your host, Christine Luken, and money certainly is emotional, especially if you're lending it to friends or family. In this episode, we discuss some common sense guidelines for lending money so you can keep your relationships and your finances drama-free. As usual, my producer, Bill, is joining me. Bill, welcome to this uncomfortable conversation.
Well, thank you, sort of, I think. I just want you to know that in preparation for this episode, I went and looked up quotes on lending to friends. None of them are positive. I just want to point out it's a bad idea.
Well, I hope you'll share a few of those quotes as we're going through here.
Be happy to. Be happy to. In fact, it's really funny. It did make me think of William Shakespeare, right? And oftentimes people say neither a bore nor lender be, and then they leave it at that, right?
Right.
The quote is, neither a borrower nor a lender be, for a loan oft loses both itself and friend.
That right there.
Yes. So with that, let me hand it back to you, Christine.
Yes. So the first thing I want to talk about is that lending money changes the nature of the relationship. So when you lend money to a friend or a family member, your relationship changes. You're no longer just two friends. You're no longer brother and sister. You are now lender and borrower. And so there is something that shifts energetically in your relationship when you borrow money from someone. You just think about if you had to borrow money from your mother-in-law and you haven't paid her back yet, and then you're going over to her house for Thanksgiving, and in the back of the head, you're thinking, gosh, I still owe her money. She's probably wondering when I'm going to pay her back. And she's thinking, oh gosh, he still owes me money. I wonder when he's going to pay me back. You can't just enjoy Thanksgiving dinner the way you would have without that loan hanging over your head, right?
No, true. It's so true. Yes.
Yeah. So, the person who borrows usually feels the weight of owing the money. There's an old joke that goes something like this, and I think your Shakespeare quote kind of alluded to this. This might be the modern version. If you lend your ex-brother-in-law $500 and you never see him again, was it worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of times, if the person can't pay you back as intended, they kind of just fade away and you never see them again.
Yeah, it's like easier to sort of disappear than say, I have a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if the person can't pay you back, they might avoid you, even if you're okay with them extending their payback time, right? Because it's just, the whole thing is awkward to talk about. The other thing that I find, which is kind of funny, is you might also become extremely interested in their day-to-day finances because they now owe you money. So, for example, if you lent your friend $1,000 because they said, like, hey, I'm short on rent money, and then you're scrolling through Instagram and you see that this friend is out with a $7 Starbucks drink.
You're right.
Right. You're going to be like, hey, why are you buying Starbucks? You still owe me money. Like, you shouldn't be spending any money until you pay me back the money you owe me, right? So you get all of this weirdness that becomes a part of the relationship because you now have this contractual agreement between the two of you, whether you've actually signed a document or not.
Yeah, and it is really weird because then suddenly you feel like you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Which is strange because as you just mentioned, it becomes a part of your relationship. You should be able to talk about it, right?
Yes. Yeah. So just be aware, as we're even just dipping our toe into the topic of talking about this, that when you lend money, it's going to get weird. It's just going to get weird. Now, it might not be weird if you just said, "Hey, Christine, can I borrow $20? I'll pay you back tomorrow. You pay me back tomorrow." Not a big deal.
That's different, though.
Right. Now, if you're the person that always asks to borrow $20 every Thursday because payday's tomorrow and you never pay me back, then it does start to become a little weird.
Right. No, that's different.
So if you're still okay with it being a little weird, then we'll progress into the conversation. Now, the second point I want to make is that if you can't afford to give the money, you can't afford to lend the money. There is a possibility that you will get $0 back from the person you are lending to. And you must be okay with that.
Yeah.
If this person doesn't pay you back on time or at all, then what? Is this going to mean that you are going to be late on your bills? Does this mean that you might be late with your rent or your house payment? If so, if this loan going bad or not being paid back on time is going to put you into financial trauma, then you cannot afford to lend the money to this person.
Fair point.
That's just period, end of story. Now, you also might not be able to afford the relational consequences of that loan going bad. So, I also tell people, you don't just want to think about, can I afford to lose the money? But you also need to think about, if this person never pays me back, is that going to drive a wedge between us? So I'll give you an example. Back when I was working for the family business, I had an employee who worked for me, and we had become friends in the course of working together. You can imagine, I think I told you my family business is machine tools. So the amount of women in the machine tool business is very small. So I think at the time it was probably just me and her, the only two women in the company.
Maybe the entire state, as a matter of fact.
So needless to say, we became friends in the course of working together. And it was getting close to Christmas time. And she said that she hadn't received her child support payment from her ex. And this was very strange because her ex was actually pretty responsible and had always paid. So, I don't know if there was some glitch in the system or what the case was, or if she was even telling me the truth, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, it pulled on my heartstrings because she had two boys. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want her two little boys to be without Christmas.
Sure.
And so I said, well, how much was your child support? And it was, I still remember the amount. It was like $880. And so I said, okay, yes, I will lend you the money. When your child support payment comes in, then you can just pay me back. Well, Christmas came and went. A good chunk of January came and went. And I started asking her, hey, did you ever get your child support from your ex? And there was always this vagueness around it. Well, I'm still checking on it. Well, I got January's, but for some reason I never got December, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. Next thing I know, she quits. And I never see her again. Never see her again. And when I made that loan, I was not okay with her never paying me back. That's why I still remember it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because now it's like $880 is nothing, right? I'm just like, yeah, that's not a big deal. Back then, it was much more of a big deal because that was over, that was 20 years ago. And I was fully expecting her
To
to
repay it.
pay me back. So I lost an employee and also lost a friend over $800 that never got paid back. Yeah. So
Ouch.
you've got to be okay with that never being paid back. And if you can say, and now I rarely lend money. Typically, if someone is in need and I feel like I want to help them, I will give them the money. There are probably a very few exceptions for some people in my inner circle that I probably would lend money to,
Mm-hmm.
but I would also only lend it to them if I would be 100% okay with them never paying it back and me not being mad.
That's a big set of ifs.
It is. So
It's a
that
big
means there's
set of
like maybe
ifs.
3 people.
Well, there's another quote about lending. It's anonymous, but it's like never lend money to a friend. It's dangerous. It could damage his memory.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So
So, so what
if you,
happens? Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, what happens? You've got us in a corner here, Christine.
well, and like I said, if you say, okay, I still want to take this chance and lend this person money.
Yeah.
I think they're responsible. I think they're going to pay me back. If I don't get paid back, I'm not going to be mad about it. If you are loaning a significant amount of money, and only you know what that is to you, then draw up a formal loan agreement in writing. And this does away with all of the misunderstandings. If everything is in writing, if we say, okay, this was the date that this person got the money, this is the repayment schedule, this is how much interest, if there is any interest, this is what happens if a payment is late or if you can't pay it back,
Mm-hmm.
then we've got all the bases covered, right? So we talked about in the first point of like, we don't even want to talk about the fact that we owe each other money.
Yeah.
If it's in writing, then we already know what's expected of each person.
Can this be a little awkward, though?
It should be a little awkward.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, if I come to you and I say, Bill, can I borrow $10,000? That should be an awkward conversation for us.
Yes, it would
Right?
be. It would be, but especially it would be awkward for on two levels. One, the fact that you've come to me and asked for a significant amount of money,
Right.
and the second would be, sure, Christine, I'm happy to do that, but I'm going to draw up a document
Mm-hmm.
so that we're kind of clear on this.
Yeah.
The fact that I expect the money to come back, and I want to establish a table for you paying it back.
Yeah. I mean, that is totally reasonable. 100% reasonable.
It feels reasonable. It feels reasonable. I just wonder if
Yeah.
it's, so one of those like awkward, weird conversations.
It is an awkward, weird conversation. However, if you're going to be borrowing money from someone, or if someone's going to be borrowing money from you,
Mhm.
there should be a significant reason why they want to borrow this money from you. Now, is there some disaster that's befallen them in their finances? I'll give you a great example that turned out perfectly fine. When my mom and dad got divorced about a year afterwards, my mom's roof on the house that we bought, the first house that she owned by herself, the roof needed to be replaced.
Okay.
And she didn't have enough money for that. And so she asked her brother if she could borrow the money to get the roof replaced. And they had a formal agreement. I don't know if it was in writing, but it was at least verbally where my mom said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay you back, this much money every month until it's paid off. And she paid it off ahead of schedule. But, my uncle understood that this was an extenuating circumstance, right?
Sure.
It wasn't because my mom was sitting on the couch eating bonbons and not working. It wasn't because she was being irresponsible. It was because she had just come out of a divorce. As we all know, a lot of people coming out of divorce, you're kind of on shaky ground financially. So these sorts of things happen, and they can have satisfactory and happy endings to them as well. So they don't have to be a disaster, but we want to enter into this arrangement with a level of seriousness, because it is serious if you're borrowing money from someone.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely serious.
So the next point I want to make is that co-signing a loan for someone is not a better option.
Why not?
Well, you might think it is, right? You might say, okay, rather than me lending you the money, if this bank is going to lend you the money, let's just say for a car or whatever the need is, I'll just co-sign this loan for you so you can get this loan, and it's not my money on the line, right? It's the bank's money on the line.
Right.
First of all, we need to understand why banks require co-signers. Banks are experts at determining whether or not someone is a good credit risk. And the bank, who does this for a living, day in and day out, 24/7, has deemed your friend or family member to be a bad credit risk. So this could be because they have no credit, they have a low credit score, they have too much debt, they don't have enough income, or some combination of those factors.
Yeah.
When you co-sign, you are both legally and financially responsible for the entire debt. And co-signed loans have a default rate upwards of 75%.
Ooh. Ooh, I did not know that.
Yes. And I double-checked that stat, and it's true. I double-checked it because I have referenced that in the past in my book, Money is Emotional. And I was like, I wonder if that's still true. And I checked it right before the podcast, and it is still true.
What?
That 75% of co-signed loans, the co-signer ends up having to pay at least some of that debt. Yeah. So,
I mean, I knew I was going to be on the hook, but whoa.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If your loved one misses a payment or pays late, it's also going to hurt your credit. Because you are a co-signer, this debt also shows up on your credit report. So
I didn't think about that. I did not think about that. Yeah.
And it also factors into the amount that you're able to borrow. So if you sign, let's say, a $30,000 car loan, you co-sign that car loan, it's $30,000. When you go to buy a house and your lender is looking at that, they consider that to be your loan. And that can affect how much you can borrow on other things for you and your family. So you're right. A lot of people do not understand this. So one of my best friends back in our college days, she co-signed a loan for her then boyfriend. He got in a car accident. It was a DUI. Completely totaled the car. He ended up going to jail. He never paid anything on that co-signed loan. They broke up. The bank came after her. She was a waitress. She did not just have 20 grand, because they wanted the whole thing. They wanted the whole entire thing. He didn't have it insured either.
Oh, I was going to say, didn't he have insurance to help with this? Oh my God, this is a nightmare.
Yeah, I know. I know. So she actually ended up having to file bankruptcy to get out of that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yes, you. Thank you so much for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. We hope you're enjoying it so far. If you have any questions or would like to talk more about this topic, you can find us at www.christineluken.com, and all of our social media platforms are listed in the show notes.
Boy, that stuck with her. That stuck with her a lot longer than the boyfriend. Wow, man, that's bad.
Yeah. So you better believe when she hears a brother, a sister, a niece, or nephew even murmuring about co-signing, like she grabs them by the ear, pulls them in the other room, and gives them a good talking to.
Good. Good. Let me tell you what can happen to you.
Yes. Yeah, it is not good. So if you're going to co-sign a loan, you want to be prepared both mentally and financially to pay in full and not be mad about it. So I would say the only time I would ever consider this is if you are a parent of a child who is very responsible. Gotcha. And they are wanting to get their first car. And let's just say you had $10,000 saved that you were going to give them for this car. And you say, look, how about this? Why don't we go and get you a car? I'll put $5,000 down. We'll get you a car loan for the other $5,000. I'll co-sign for you. This way, you can start building up responsibility.
Okay.
I was going to give you this money anyways.
Sure.
You're going to start establishing your credit. We can even pay the payment out of that other $5,000. You're going to have to make up the difference with the interest. Or you can say, look, let's just say we get this loan over 2 years. Your payments are going to be roughly $200-ish a month. At the end of the loan, I will give you the $5,000. We can take that car, trade it in along with the $5,000 that I've got left for you, and you can get a nicer car. And then you'll be able to get that car without me as a cosigner. What do you think? I think that sort of a situation, when set up properly, can go really well.
Yeah.
But you do have to tell your child, look, if you think you're not going to make this payment on time, you need to talk to me immediately because this affects my credit, not just your credit.
True. That is, of the scenarios you've discussed so far, that one makes the most sense from both an economic standpoint and just, a child rearing standpoint. I can understand that. But my question to you is, when somebody comes to you, when a loved one comes to you and says, hey, Christine, I'm in a bind and I really do need to borrow some money. It's an awkward conversation like we alluded to at first, but it's really a lot more awkward for me to say, I'm sorry, Christine, I can't.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm actually glad you said it that way because I'm going to recommend you don't use the word can't. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
When you say I can't, it implies I want to, but something's keeping me from helping you. That invites them to start problem solving with you.
Oh.
Well, what if you did this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? So, making a very simple change, I won't be able to help you. I won't be helping you this time. End of story. I will not. Not I cannot.
Yeah.
Because when you say I can't, it makes it seem like, well, I want to, but I can't.
Yeah, it's kind of like a soft no. Yeah, I could, but yeah, want makes it a lot more certain.
It does. It does. So now, one of the easiest ways, and I know people are probably going to want to replay this one so they can write it down. And I'm sure we'll make a quote meme out of this one. Like, editing team, take note.
Take note, take note.
Here's what I say. I have a personal policy never to lend friends or family money. And if the person asks why, I say, my relationship with you is too important for money to come between us. I'm sorry, but they're going to look like an a-hole if they argue with you about that.
I was going to say, man, that made me feel really good. You turning me down made me feel really, really good, Christine.
I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with that. They're like, oh my gosh, like don't want anything to come in between us.
Wow, that is sweet.
Wow.
Thank you so much for telling me no.
Yes. So another tactic that we can use is to not respond immediately on the spot. Sometimes it is really hard when someone is looking at you with the puppy dog eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And saying please, and God forbid they start crying. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just like, oh God, anything to get you to stop crying.
Please stop crying. Please.
Right? Like, oh my gosh. I used to have a friend who she would get pulled over for speeding all the time, but she got out of tickets every single time because she would immediately burst into tears.
No.
And the cops would always let her off. I was like so mad because I've never gotten out of a speeding ticket before. I'm just like, give me the ticket.
Just give it to me.
Just give it to me.
Okay.
I know, I was speeding. So you can say that, right? So if someone is asking to borrow money, you can say, I'd like to think about it overnight.
Okay.
If you are married or managing finances jointly with a partner or spouse, you absolutely need to talk to your spouse about it. So saying, I need to talk to my wife or I need to talk to my husband or my partner, that's not a cop-out. That is legit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but give your answer within a day or so. So you don't have to answer on the spot, but don't drag it out for much more than a day because it's awkward for them, right? You know, they're kind of tossing and turning, wondering if you're going to help them. If you're going to say no, just be nice and say no so they can move on to their next option. Right? And then go back to what I said. My relationship with you is too important for money to come in between us. Right? So the other thing I want to say is be clear, be concise, and be nice. No is a complete sentence. You do not owe an explanation of why you cannot or will not lend them the money.
Yeah.
You don't. We feel like we need to because we don't want people to think we're mean.
Right. No, absolutely. No. There is an old saw that you never answer anything but the question asked when you're asked a question, right? Mm-hmm. So that because we want to elaborate, we want to explain, we feel guilty because I'm not going to lend you the money. It feels strange, but no is a complete sentence.
Yes. Well, and it is hard when people use the guilt trip against us. And I will say, like, my ex-fiance was a master manipulator. I mean, he would say things like, well, what's more important to you, me or money? As if I'm supposed to choose between two things. Just because I am respecting my own financial boundaries does not mean that I don't love you.
Right.
It means true. I also love myself, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I love and respect myself. That's also important. So I have some great examples, and feel free to steal these, listeners. I won't be able to lend money to you at this time. That's it. It's not feasible in our family finances to help right now. right? It's a nice way of saying it's not in the budget.
Right.
We're not comfortable co-signing for you. That might be uncomfortable to say, but if it's the truth, then it's the truth, right? And, most of the time, we know if the person is responsible or not. We all have those people in our lives, and I really should have known about my coworker, the friend from the beginning.
Yeah.
She was just a drama magnet. There was all kinds of drama always happening in her life, whether it was financial or otherwise. So it really should have been no surprise to me that, first of all, that she was in trouble, and second of all, that she never paid me back, because this is a pattern. And we talked about that in one of the previous episodes, which we'll be sure to link up in the show notes, about financial enabling.
Yeah.
Like, are you helping someone or are you enabling someone?
Enabling them, yeah.
Because sometimes in our attempts to help people, we're only prolonging the inevitable, right? They're going to crash and burn. It's just a matter of when. And do you really want them to take you with them?
Do you want to
As
be
they
on a
crash
plane
and burn.
with them when it's when it can't land, it's got to crash?
Exactly. Right. So let me just say, you are not a bad person for protecting and enforcing your healthy financial boundaries.
Yeah.
And there are other ways to help out loved ones who are in need. If someone is usually responsible and they've fallen on hard times, then by all means help them if you can. And I would encourage you, if you can just help them and just give them the money, that's the best way to do it.
Okay.
And even in times when, there were times after I lent that coworker money where I did have two other people ask me to borrow money. And when I lent it to these people, in my mind, I said to myself, this is a gift. If I ever get it back, then that's great. If I don't, I'm not going to be mad about it.
Okay.
In one case, I got the money back. In the other case, I didn't. Either way, like I couldn't even tell you how much money the other person didn't pay me. I just know that it was several $1,000s. It wasn't just $800.
Okay.
But I wasn't mad about it because I went into it thinking that this was a gift.
So you made peace with yourself beforehand. You were like,
Yes.
okay, this is where I'm at and this is what I'm going to do. And if he or she pays me back, it's a bonus. But other than that, I'm just not going to let it get in the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Because, we want to be generous when we can. That's awesome. That's one of the best things about being financially healthy, is that you get to be generous with no strings attached. Now, let's just say this is someone that you have a relationship with that is really important to you, but maybe they're not the most responsible person. So, especially when you've got a situation where kids are involved. So I see this happen a lot with, grandparents helping out. The adult child now has children. Mm-hmm. They are not a financial grown-up, though, yet. And so
they're financial adolescents at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are. And so the grandparents are being asked to help. And they may or may not feel comfortable just giving money or lending money. Well, you can offer other ways to help besides just giving money. So let's say, for example, if your daughter calls and says, I need grocery money. We don't have any food in the house. You can say, okay, great. I'm going to be grocery shopping at Walmart on this street on Saturday. Meet me there with a shopping cart and I will pay for both of our groceries.
Mm.
If they turn that down, then maybe they're not being 100% honest with you.
I think maybe. Might be a clue.
Right. So, yeah, or you could pay their past due electric bill for them rather than just giving them or lending them the money. You can just say, all right, let me see the bill. I'll write a check. I'll go ahead and pay for it. Or if their car's in the shop, you can say, you know what? I'll give you a ride to work if it's one of your coworkers. No, I can't lend you money to get your car fixed, but you live 2 miles away from me. If you want to carpool with me until you get it fixed, we can do that. Right? There's other ways to help without making it weird with the lending.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And it's funny because my mind automatically goes to monetary issues. Mm-hmm. But I like the example of, well, if your car's in the shop and you can't get around, you live close, let's carpool.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that you can do too, if generosity is very important to you, and I find that for a lot of my clients, it is. They are generous people, sometimes to a fault. And maybe sometimes that's how they've gotten themselves into some of the financial binds that they're in. So what we'll do is we will dedicate a certain amount in their spending plan for generosity. And I encourage them to open up an account specifically for that money. So I got that idea from my friend James Lenhoff, who was our very first guest on the Money is Emotional podcast. I think it's maybe episode 3 or 4, where we were talking about teaching your little kids about money. In his book, Living a Rich Life, he talks about the abundance fund. No. And so him and his wife have basically decided on an amount that goes into that account every month. They each have a debit card on that account and some checks. If the giving that they're doing is below a certain amount, they don't have to ask each other. They just do it. So if James is gassing up his car and he sees a woman with 5 kids in her minivan and it looks like it's held together by duct tape, he can just swipe at the pump and pay for her gas.
Yeah.
And if it's over a certain amount, then they discuss it. Now, they'll go back, when they have dinner, they'll be like, hey, I got to bless somebody today. I paid for this lady's gas. She had 5 or 6 kids loaded up in her minivan, and I think I just made her day. Right. So when you've got some money set aside for those things, then you can just give it and you don't have to get into this weirdness of lending money to loved ones.
I like that idea. Abundance fund. I like that.
Yeah. So lending money is a sticky subject. Mm-hmm. Your best bet is to avoid it altogether. Get your own finances in a strong and healthy place so you can give as you feel led without any strings attached.
See, now that is not an awkward conversation.
No.
That is a conversation that makes you feel good because I completely agree. I think that most people actually are very generous people. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes they get stuck into the trap of loaning money to friends because they feel like they're being generous. They feel like they're being helpful. And it's not their intention to strain the relationship. And it's not their intention to create awkwardness or weirdness.
I know.
But boy,
sure can.
As you just talked about, it can happen that way. Yeah.
So see, we took this conversation from uncomfortableness at the top. Now we're down into the warm fuzzies as we close this out.
Exactly. Like the warm fuzzies. That's good. Good place to be.
Group hug.
Very nice.
Well, that's all we got for you today.
That's all we got for you today. We hope the group hug didn't interfere with your driving if you're in the car today.
Yes.
We want to thank you for listening, as a matter of fact, and remind you that if you're not a subscriber, you can be one. It's really easy. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button. That way you're automatically notified when Christine has a new episode and when it's released. We would also say, look, if you like this conversation and you like the kinds of things that Christine is talking about, please let people know, share it with people, spread the word, get the word out. That's not an awkward conversation. Folks, in fact, thank you for doing that, as a matter of fact. Thank you so much for listening. On behalf of Christine, I'm Bill Tucker, reminding you that you can go out today and make today a wonderful day. Or you can choose not to. It's your choice. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. To get in touch, visit our website at www.christineluken.com or drop us a line at hello@christineluken.com. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Christine Luken. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your advisor, tax professional, or other qualified financial professional with any questions you may have regarding your personal finances.